New York City, Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles, London. I learned about these cities through gangster films.
Oh,
We're going to talk about that today.
yeah. Bullets, bricks, secrets, suits. It's all in there. Welcome to today's episode of TheSquare. We're continuing in our architecture and film series. There's like 6 more of these if you haven't seen them yet, so go check them out. If you don't already know, I'm joined by James Adams, architect, designer extraordinaire. I'm Brandon Carmichael. I'm down in the media lab, and we get to take a couple hours every couple of weeks and just sit and talk about films, which we both love.
We're going to get this
Don't tell
canceled.
anyone. Today, we're diving into gangster films, and it kind of got prompted because Alto Nights came out. I'm a big De Niro fan. We thought, hey, let's go watch that one together.
Yeah.
It's our second film to watch together.
Yeah,
And then it kind of grew into, let's talk about the whole gangster
Well, yeah.
genre as a whole.
It also got prompted because I think everyone who wrote in, called in, talked to us wherever we saw them, everyone's always talking about this podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Said, when are you doing gangster films? When are you doing gangster films?
Yeah.
Where's Scarface, Godfather? All
I don't think I realized how hard a genre it was to define either. I mean, because there's some films that are, not traditional gangster films that definitely fit the genre. So we'll dive into that, but let's start, because we went and saw it, and it's, by the time this rolls out, probably out of theaters, but Alto Nights.
Yeah.
So
and let's that's a good. Sorry, I want to jump right there. So we're gonna jump right to Alto Nights, but it is interesting. We're talking a lot about Italian mafia movies when we say gangster films. It is such a wide range.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can dive into a little bit more of that. I mean, and I don't mean just that. I mean, besides the Irish mobs and South American mobs.
American Gangster with Denzel.
Exactly. There's so much to cover.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Organized
crime. That's what we're here for today. Organized crime.
So, how many times
Isn't that what we do?
that on an architecture
Organized
podcast?
crime.
So, Alto Nights, a couple of the keynotes directed by Barry Levinson and the writer.
I think more important, Nicholas Pileggi is the writer for this. He is the writer for the story that inspired this. He also had done previously, and also worked with Scorsese, but I'm sorry, with De Niro.
Yes.
Not Scorsese.
No.
They're so inextricably linked together, but did the Casino. And before he did Casino, he had done Goodfellas.
Goodfellas,
Everyone knows Goodfellas.
Another
Goodfellas.
amazing gangster.
Yeah, I mean, Goodfellas is one of those movies that really contributed to the kind of modern gangster movie. Well, I'm sure we'll get into that.
Well, it's funny, the Freudian slip of Scorsese, because you have so many different elements of what would normally make an incredible film, particularly showcased by Scorsese.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert, I think it falls flat. It definitely does. And I'm
It's
massive,
a little.
De Niro was why I went and wanted to see the movie.
Yes. Yeah.
And him doing the dual role. And dual role is a ridiculously hard thing to pull off.
Oh, absolutely. We were talking numbers. Do you think he got paid twice for that?
Yeah, definitely. I hope so. Probably not out of that budget. It was like a $50 million budget, and they've made somewhere under 10.
They made, I think, 6 million. Maybe 9 globally.
Yeah.
But, still waiting on those.
But I don't know. It was interesting because with the editing and the use of the black and white stills, all these 2D images, the movie itself felt very kind of 2D when you compare it to other, shining pieces of work from the gangster genre.
Absolutely, and the bar is high because of movies like Goodfellas and others that preceded that. I mean, the gangster film genre dates back pretty much as far as film, which is interesting because really the rise of especially the American gangster, Western, Italian mob came and Jewish mob, Irish mob, so much of that came from Prohibition, right?
Yeah.
So that's really more of a 20s, 30s thing when bootlegging could really elevate as a way to make money under the table, and yet the films go back that far.
So speaking of gangster things that happen, and I can't find exactly what the story is, but originally this was going to be De Niro and Al Pacino.
Oh man,
which
I could feel the
think
heat
would have
from
done.
that.
Yeah, I
But
see what you did there. But it ended up being De Niro doing both parts, and I don't know what happened there.
yeah,
But I wonder if it would have been a little bit more because again, he's an incredible actor, but I just don't feel like the two characters were different enough.
yeah, yeah. And that's tough to pull off.
Yeah.
A makeup played a good part. You know, this movie, you kind of said earlier, falls flat. Literally, it's a very two-dimensional movie in the way it's approached, the way the story is told, the way the characters are. I mean, there's not a lot of depth to these characters they're
Even
playing.
in the settings, the architecture in the world.
We'll definitely get into that. But just even in the, I mean, as good an actor as we've got here, playing Frank Costello in a semi-accurate, as far as I understand it to be, part of his life and his story, and the attempted assassination on him, and then his rivalry with his long-standing gangster family
/ friend.
Yeah, returning from after being in prison from Prohibition. They just don't get beyond the very depth of those characters, and there's secondary characters in the movie are almost non-existent.
Yeah,
I mean, both of them are married at one point or another in the movie, and their wives play a small role, but they're great acting by them just as much. But you don't really see much else besides that. A lot of henchmen.
Well, and I want to know, because we'll obviously get into the architecture in a second, and we're going to talk. We're going to ask the same question of the two other films, Departed and Untouchables, that we're
giving it away already.
I know they're 20 years apart. It's going to be a great setup. But what do you think? You asked me this when we were talking previously. What do you think was the pivotal scene in Alto Nights?
Okay, so and I teased you about that, and because I think there's two right answers here, or two scenes that really rise to the occasion, and one of them you picked up right away, and that is the spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the movie,
yes,
Frank Costello they did attempt to assassinate him in real life.
It does happen like in the first 30 seconds of the movie, so not a huge spoiler, but
I think it's in the trailer.
And it's in the trailer, yeah.
Anyway, there's an attempted assassination in an old hotel, in the elevator itself. The elevator door opens. The shot is fired, and really it's not so much that scene, it's all the scenes that are set in that elevator, because there's several. And at one point later, because this is an elevator in the building that he lives in.
Right.
And his wife comes back later after the crime scene is cleared, long after in her husband's home from the hospital, and she's touching the blood that is smeared across.
She's like wiping it off.
Yeah, off the broken mirrored glass. And you get a really good textural moment of where they live and what the environment is like. And what I love about that too is this movie set in the 50s, and this happened, I guess, in the late 50s. And this hotel is, from 30 years earlier at a kind of a peak American, or one of America's peaks, if you will, the 20th century, of a time already gone. Yeah. And there's this kind of juxtaposition of his blood across that, and there's a lot you can draw from all that. So I think that's one is very visceral, because it's on set. It's a real place. It's a real elevator. It's really filmed there. It's how they got all that camera in there with all the mirrors. I don't understand how that works. Someone I'm sure could tell me. But two, the other scene is the final scene of the movie, which is also based on a true story, which is how his character corroborated, not corroborated, but the key scene at the end.
How he basically exonerated himself in the press.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And how he got everyone else arrested.
Yeah, exactly.
It's at a farmhouse upstate New York. It's actually filmed upstate Cincinnati. up city, northeast Cincinnati, I believe.
Yes.
And it's mostly on the road. But there's something about they're finally outdoors, and it's bright daylight. It kind of reminds me, if you watch I forget which cut of Blade Runner, but a movie we really haven't covered Blade Runner. But anyway, that movie's very dark.
There's a tease in there somewhere.
There is. That movie's a very carefully task-lit filmed movie, and at the very end, in one of those cuts, there's a scene when the main characters get out to daylight and they're driving off, and it's so bright, and that contrast is just very jarring at the end. Maybe it triggered that thought in my brain, but this scene is like the first time it's like bright and open and outdoors, and I mention that because the movie is very claustrophobic.
Yeah,
it's very contained in these very tiny sets. Even there's a couple of streets or a couple scenes that are supposed to be out on the street in Little Italy. They're actually filmed in Cincinnati.
Yeah, and
the camera shots are tight, even when they're aerial cameras at 30 feet off the ground. They're zoomed in on characters. They don't really show. You don't ever feel you're anywhere.
Yeah,
and that's, I think, what contributes to the two-dimensionality we talk about with this movie. That helps it fall flat. And when you combine that with just not great dialogue and acting, there's nothing to carry the movie.
So then, as we start to talk about the other movies, what do you think Alto Nights adds to the canon of gangster films?
How to use the most well-known gangster actors in a terrible way.
Terrible
No,
way.
I think that one of the point I want to take from this is that there are there are plenty of movies, and I'm not sure I'm prepared to make a list of them, that don't have that great of dialogue or that great of acting. um, like Star Wars maybe, but have amazing film and scenes and sets and world building and immersive environments. They set you up for success where it overcomes anything else. And there's a lot of movies I think we love more because of that. The magic, the mystique of Hollywood, of filming on a location, can be just amazing.
Yeah, so I totally agree. The thing that stood out in my mind is, and producer Adam said this when we were kind of doing prep for this, and that is there is great movies are greater than the sum of their parts, right?
Yes.
And this is a great example of some incredible parts that just never become something more.
Yeah.
And for me, that's kind of, I mean, it sounds harsh. It's what it adds to the canon is this is not a templated, easy genre to pull off. It's something that you have to have a craft and a skill to it. And if you can fail at doing a gangster movie.
Yeah. Oh, you can. They clearly went to a lot of trouble, nonetheless, to really pick their locations.
Yeah.
Also, they had a tight budget. I mean, I don't know about that. They had $45 million just for the production budget alone.
And let's assume you weren't paying De Niro twice.
Yeah, I bet not. I bet at this point, if you're De Niro or an Al Pacino, I mean, are those guys both busy at home with newborns? Like, I'm not. That's not a dig. I'm being serious. Like,
I mean, it could be either way. All right, so
goals.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about the two other films.
Yeah.
Because we basically bracketed.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you've got starting off with The Untouchables, '87, Brian De Palma, an incredible film. And then
a violent film too.
Very. And then you've got The Departed, which even though it was done in '06, it kind of is set '06-ish, and
It's
even
weird,
though Alto Nights was done this last year, it's set, you know,
the 50s.
in the 50s.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's funny, and they're all 20 years apart.
Yeah.
I think that was part of the decision on these particular three movies was let's just look at how different gangster films have contributed over the last, say, 40, 50 years to the genre.
So, just jump in. What do you think? Let's assume that you have. There will be spoilers in here on these movies if you have not watched them. Let's talk about what do you think is the most pivotal scene of Untouchables?
Okay, I'm going to come about this roundabout, but I'm going to answer it. Okay, so I want to bring this a little bit back to architecture right off the bat because that's what it's going to be about.
Yeah.
I saw The Untouchables in 1988. Don't tell my father that.
Yeah.
He's still alive, doing well, and he probably would not be happy that he knew I kind of snuck in and watched him watch it on HBO in our house in Albuquerque. And I revisited it probably a couple of years later. I was a little older, and I wanted to go to Chicago. I wanted to go to the station. I wanted to see that city. I was enamored with it, and I was already on the path to wanting to be an architect and wanting to travel and do these things at some level. And
so your origin film is really The Untouchables.
Well, it goes back even further, but we're using the three movies we had.
Yeah.
So then, The Departed, I guess I saw that probably in '06. I think I saw it actually, you know when I saw Departed? Hold on a minute. I'll tell you when I saw Departed. I did not see Departed when it came out. I went to the AIA National Conference in 2008, and it was in Boston that summer. And I had never been to Boston yet. And the firm Corgan sent me. I said, hey, why don't we send anyone to the conference? And made a little case together for John Holzheimer. And he sent me on my way out there. And as part of my immersive preparation that I tend to do for all trips like this, for new cities, I immersed myself in everything Boston.
Yeah.
So that included movies. So I went back and rewatched Good Will Hunting. I watched movies that inspired me about Boston.
Yeah.
And I watched for the first time
Departed. Yeah.
And it had already been out for a year or two. I just hadn't gotten around to seeing it. I was so busy at work. I was a young guy.
Yeah,
working 3 or 4
you're
years
just such
in
a
here.
committed architect.
and I wanted to see all these things, and I was like, I couldn't wait to go to Boston. And it's funny. There's a song that kicks off in that movie that I remember was like my anthem, my walk off song. You know,
Dropkick Murphys.
It was a Dropkick Murphys. Yes,
shipping off to Boston.
Yeah, it was. And I was excited about going to Boston. So to bring this all around. So then in 2025, about maybe 3 weeks ago, I went and saw Alto Nights.
Yeah.
And I had never been to Cincinnati, and I'd love to see it someday, but this movie was not the movie that inspired me.
This is not your origin story for Cincinnati.
It was supposed to be New York City anyway.
Yeah.
And ironically, Departed is largely filmed in New York as well, and Boston. My point of all that is like how pivotal the architecture is in these movies and how it really does move us. And so to answer your question, to go all the way around again, this is the classic fashion. 10-minute answer.
I have it's not because we have not talked about this, so we do not know what the other person's going to say for these other two. But I have a feeling you're about to say the same scene.
I don't know if we are, but let's see. Okay, so there's a lot of scenes in that movie I like, but there's a scene at the very end of the movie, and it's filmed. The key part of it is in slow motion, and Andy Garcia and
to say the same one.
Are we gonna say the same scene? Andy Garcia and Kevin Costner and the two
multiple bad guys,
two henchmen, and are in a fight scene.
And
the accountant. That's right. Because they're trying to. Are we spoiling this movie? Is it too early? 40 years.
It is the end of the movie we're talking about.
Slow motion action scene. Andy Garcia throws a gun up in the air. There's a baby stroller about to go down the steps here, but we are in Central Station.
Yes.
And the architecture is just fantastic in that station.
Yeah.
And they're there at the train station, using the train station the way train stations are supposed to be used in this time period, right? It's not like you're going there and visiting it later, or it's just it's active. It's in its heyday.
We may or may not be showing right now in the edit the slow motion part of it.
Awesome. It is fantastic. Yeah. And I remember being behind the couch in my parents' house watching that scene. And I know we brought this movie into the fold and talking about it in our discovery kind of late in the game, but like that is the scene of all this. And there's a lot of good scenes in that movie.
I totally agree. It's in fact both the scene for Departed and for Untouchable for me have to do with vertical elevation.
Oh boy!
There you
go.
Boy! See if I haven't given away.
Are we getting back to elevators again?
Scene.
Like
all the way back to Die Hard.
Okay.
But the idea, because Kevin Costner's character, who is the moral right character, and this I will say, we'll talk about it. I won't get sidetracked. We're gonna get
like a Tommy gun, spray it out.
Yeah. There's something about the fact there's something that really separates the Untouchable from the other two, and that's because you're never wondering who the bad guy is.
Oh yeah.
Whereas
he wears
Departed, and one of the things I love about the gangster genre as a whole is it blurs the line between who's good and who's bad, and often, like it's not a movie, but Sopranos and others, it's not necessarily law enforcement that is the one that is the good guy, number one.
It's a trope. I mean, it is.
100%.
Bad cops.
And number two, you are given permission to root for someone to dominate someone else that's a bad guy because it's two bad guys. Yep. So then it's okay.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, blurs the lines there. But I love this scene because you have Elliot Ness, who's the Kevin Costner's character, at the top of the stairs.
True story.
You have
not this part, I don't think.
No, probably not. You have the henchmen that are kind of on the scale of the stairs. One's at the top, a couple are at the bottom.
Yeah.
You have this baby that is kind of the metaphor for innocence, and it's horrific, especially as a father, which I know you can appreciate, to watch this baby. And there's one shot where the carriage gets shot. It does not hurt the baby, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But you're just watching this descent of justice and everything that's innocent and right. And it's just how the power shifts in the movie around that scene. Yeah. And you have a visual descent. It is just, Brian De Palma did an incredible
really good point. The verticality, the transition of space, the way it allows the camera to be shot up high and down low, and you see the architecture in different ways, and it just consumes the frame of the film.
it's such a violent series too. Like just
yeah.
the amount. I mean, I'm gonna cut a lot of the stuff out because it probably would get flagged on YouTube anyway. But just the amount of violence in this one scene is incredible.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider it was done in '87.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we talked about the best scenes in the two of these movies now.
Yeah.
And they're actually both semi-violent, fairly violent scenes. I mean, or they're their aftermath, or they allude to a violence. I think actually her wiping the blood isn't necessarily violent,
Yeah.
but it does have the visceralness of his blood on the glass, and her emotional response.
Are you leading into our Departed scene,
I
which
think
is probably
so.
going to be the same one too?
I think our Departed scene's different.
Okay.
But do you want to go first, or want me to go? Oh, you want to
I'll go first.
Okay, go
so
ahead.
following that idea of vertical movement and being a metaphor for the movie, it's got to be the abandoned building as a set plays such a crucial role. Just the decay of everything in that movie.
Yeah.
And then the elevator ride down, which is just
You were
so beautiful.
halfway into the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking on the
You're
elevator.
a little bit more than halfway, but there's still a lot of movie that comes after that. And the way that you finally feel like an elevator in that instance represents freedom and escape, and those doors.
Two of the
big
two of the
spoiler
main
alert.
characters.
So
two of the main characters.
Yeah.
Right here on the elevator.
tag 30 seconds forward, you have Matt Damon's character and Leonardo DiCaprio's character in there, and you're getting this. Yeah. It's resolution. Well, he's captured him. He's laid the trap. He's captured him. There's going to be justice. Those doors open, and it is gone. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And you're just.
What happens?
Rarely are you.
What happens?
DiCaprio takes it right in the temple.
And right as the doors open.
Right as the doors open. And it's one of those things that you just. Those moments in films, you just sit there and you go, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And how is this movie going to. It's kind of like some of those Game of Thrones moments now.
Yeah.
And
main characters established early, or it feels like they're main characters, 100%. And they're critical to the rest of the story, you assume, are suddenly gone.
And it's set in this idea of this abandoned building that represents just the decay and the falling part of the entire story.
Yeah. Someone else also didn't have a good experience coming down the building either, but more quickly, Martin Sheen, thrown off the roof, I think, in that scene. Okay, and I like that. We're going to talk more about that. Let me just quickly knock that scene out, just because it's more about the world building. It's the very, very last scene of the movie. Mark Wahlberg comes. We're spoiling again. Mark Wahlberg steps into I think it's how it goes down, the hotel room, and Matt Damon, who has managed to survive all of this. This carnage throughout the film and all the double crossing and the rats on both sides is executed unexpectedly in the hotel room. I think it's in the hotel room, and the camera cuts back and it's Mark Wahlberg's character, and he's like got plastic gloves on. He's a professional. Yeah, he's just murdered another. He's just the same way DiCaprio went down halfway through the film. Now it's unexpectedly. There's no happy ending for Matt Damon's character either, and the camera pans over and looks at the Massachusetts State House and the Gold Dome through the window.
Oh, that is a great scene.
And it just it's like it closes on that, but being in Boston and setting the world of Boston and talking about justice and a reference to who got justice, who's good, who's bad, and the morality of this genre of who do we root for. I mean, chef's kiss if we're doing Italy here. This is actually Irish mob, but just a great into a movie, and to use that state capitol or state house as its dome as a symbol for so much in that movie. Yeah, and it's one of those things that I think lots of people can appreciate that. I'm sure there's people that's lost on, and it's a privilege to be talking about these kind of things and trained in these kind of things, to be able to really relish the intelligence of our director and our storytellers to use those kind of metaphors, to use the architecture so swimmingly well. Not even just a building evokes a certain kind of emotion, but a literal reference of what that institute stands for.
Well, you talked about briefly world building. I'm curious how you think the physical spaces, like the precincts, the hideouts, the bars, the penthouses, shape the characters.
Oh yeah.
Like, how does that architecture inform the characters? Are there any of them that stand out to you specifically as like a strong example?
I think there's just such a strong contrast in some of those things. And like you think about the bar where Frank Costello, played by Jack Nicholson,
Yeah.
kind of his hideout, and I think it's one of our opening scenes in the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, yeah.
And
Don't order a cranberry juice.
yeah, it it is this somewhat modest place to be.
It's an everyday bar.
It's an everyday bar, and
Yeah.
it's their holdout. It's a place you wouldn't want to step into if you were on the wrong side
Yeah.
of them. But it also has this modesty to it, and this humility. This, I don't know what I'm looking for there, but it's very different than.
It's devoid of the kind of hubris that a lot of the other places have.
Yeah, and in that movie they use an institute. I'm trying to think of the name of the institute. For the police headquarters, and it's a Paul Rudolph building, Brutalist style architecture. Brutalist.
Oh, there we go.
Beautiful building for its time period. One of the better Brutalist buildings, but it still conveys the same emotions that we talked about in a previous episode. The authoritative, stark, large scale building with all kinds of nooks and crannies and shadows and just stature to it, and all the police are working in there, and all these little. And it's funny. It has the same. Even though it's this grand effect in some ways, it also feels very, as the movie goes on, like whose office can I listen into? There's glass. There's blinds. They're closing in scenes. They're trying to get privacy. There's a cat and mouse game going on even inside this facility, which in some ways is ironic because of the chiaroscuro and the dark lighting and the leather and rich wood spaces in the Departed's in the bar there, are in some ways more open and transparent. Yeah. And more familiar, more family, more welcoming.
And to that point, like Sean Connery's character in Untouchable, the way we get to be in his apartment, like it's exactly what you would expect of a cop who's been on the beat his whole life, right?
Yeah.
It's not
a truly good cop.
A truly good cop.
Truly good cop.
It's not something that is, it is not opulent in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. It is very kind of everyday. And
which is so refreshing because that character, I'm cutting you off, I apologize, but there's so many tropes in these movies. And we'll talk more about tropes, I think, and settings and characters and things like that. And it just goes back to like, the myth, the hero's journey, good guy in white, bad guy in black, and how we play with those tropes. But one of the tropes is simply this idea we've talked about of who is good and who's bad, who's actually evil. And again, we play the trope that Chicago government or maybe any government, talking about Departed with Boston, that they're corrupt somehow. They ought to be corrupt. The police are corrupt. Everything's corrupt. And maybe the real knights, the real good men and women are actually the ones in the mob. It's the
ones that have some kind of moral center.
It's a propaganda. I think we've been told a lot of gang-ruled neighborhoods employ anyway.
Yeah.
It's like that we're actually here to help you. So anyway, I think how that presents itself in this movie, with everyone being bad, and we finally have a good cop. We have this really good cop. We have Sean Connery. It's just this straight and narrow good guy, and Elliot Ness needs to recruit somebody like that.
Yeah.
I love that. And then in contrast to that, to Robert De Niro plays Al Capone, and is I think he won an Oscar for this role, a supporting actor Oscar for a tiny role. It's like one of the shortest roles. I can't confirm that, but I believe it's one of the shortest roles.
7 scenes that he's in.
It's barely in the movie, and his main henchman is I can't think of the actor's name. He's great. He plays the most evil characters. He's all in white, a white suit all the time with a flat brimmed hat. And then he is just evil, but he's always in that white, and he shows up in these scenes. And I just love the strong tropes of these. And some of them are kind of flipped on their head, but it's really clear to identify who's good, who's bad. And it kind of ties back to the sets. So I went on a tangent there.
Well, no, it actually is a great lead-in because power is such a interesting thing in the gangster genre. It's such a intricate part of the story. And typically power is seen by men or, weapons or things like that. Mm-hmm. But I think the architecture has a lot of a role in the gangster films that, without stretching it too far. How do you feel like that power? I mean, it's
you're right.
The world building.
You're right.
It shows subtly the clues of who has the power and who doesn't.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because Frank Costello's character in Departed has the power. Back to what I was trying to say is that he's in this little bar, but he has all the power in the world in that bar.
Yeah.
And yet the head of the police, and but between we have Martin Sheen, and we also have um,
Mark Wahlberg.
Mark
And
Wahlberg,
Martin Sheen.
and
Oh,
another big header,
Baldwin.
Alec Baldwin.
Alec Baldwin, yeah.
And yet they're running around with their heads cut off in the big
Yeah.
fortress downtown. They're the ones that should have all the authority in this big, great space, and they don't have it at all.
Because you're so
they're on
right.
lock.
It's like he has Jack Nicholson has the power hidden.
Yeah.
But which works perfect for this story because there's so many masks and so many deceit and so much that is unknown and hidden.
Yeah.
How do you think that works in Untouchable?
When we first see Al Pacino the first time, I believe it's the scene when he's in the barber, he's being shaved,
Right.
in his hotel room. I think this is the first scene. Someone correct me. I did not watch the movie this week because I've watched it so many times.
Yeah.
And it's an aerial shot looking down at him as he's laid back, getting his beard shaved, and then he gets up and he walks out through the hotel and he's out on the street, and I think he's approached by someone. But it's a scene of him in all this opulence, and he is thumbing his nose at all of the law of Chicago. He is the biggest mobster, and it's not a secret, and he controls everything. He controls the police. He controls everybody.
Very open about it.
Yeah, very open about it. Just flaunts it everywhere he goes. And it just shows all this power in this hotel. But that scene is, I think, a really pivotal scene in that movie. I think also you see a lot of, you see Elliot Ness's home. You see Sean Connery's apartment. You see both their places, and they're very modest. They're very modest places, with his family and everything.
It is interesting. Even the police stations are not, they're in contrast to the opulence that we see with De Niro.
Yeah, yeah.
You led into it a little bit, so let's talk a little bit about the tropes that are kind of tied to the gangster ones. What are the ones that kind of stand out in your mind first and foremost?
You got to have a good ethnic restaurant, or whatever the base of the family.
All right, I'm going to rephrase this question.
Okay.
If you were designing a mob boss's headquarters or the settings that he would have in his day-to-day life, what are the must-haves? So, ethnic restaurant.
Ethnic restaurant. It's got to have like some Polish sausage or some Italian meatballs or
something specific.
A really good bakery with a really good bread. I don't know. It's got to have these kind of things. It has to have that.
I mean, even in American Gangster, Denzel had that diner.
Yes, exactly.
They have their
home base.
Absolutely.
It's probably where they started. They grew up. They were in the neighborhood. They saw these things. I mean, Godfather, even there's many of them in that. But think of even like the grocery store that he starts off in. It's tying back to a neighborhood, and so somehow they have to be rooted of the people.
Yeah.
And it's a big part of it. Always is the charisma, the cult of personality, the gang leader, the capo. The two-titty capo, whatever, has to be like of the people.
Yeah,
that's how it works. Populist. So, so you gotta have that. Then you gotta have that setting, and the good food.
Yeah.
You gotta have, like a dark room that the deals get done in.
Yeah.
You gotta
something
have,
with light and contrast.
Yeah, yeah. And there's got to be like a second person in that room with you, who's your consigliere or whatever their role is in particular structure of your organized crime.
Yeah.
But you have that room. And there's usually a pet or something like that in there, a cat or a dog or something like that.
There also has to be something that is what people would aspire to. So it doesn't necessarily have to be opulence, but even in Alto Nights, Costello's, De Niro's Costello in Alto Nights had, kind of like the penthouse, and it wasn't opulent, but you could tell it was nice, and the elevator and the lobby, and you could tell like that was something people would aspire to, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you have that contrast between home base and, for some reason I keep coming back to American Gangster, but you have the diner, and then you have that mansion that he bought with his whole family, right? So you have these two things that show, I haven't forgotten where I came from, but this is I'm not content to be there. I'm moving somewhere else.
Yeah. I think Vin Diesel made the comment about how, your family.
This is going to be good. How do you tie Vin Diesel in here?
Being part of a family?
Yes. I guess we could kind of think of Fast and Furious as a little bit of a gangster film.
Absolutely. And there's like 9 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
They are, but you're part of a family. You're part of 2 families usually. You have your personal family, and you have the business, which is a family. You treat it like a family, which is one of the most toxic things to do, is pretend your business is your family.
100%.
And then like that role of the idea of like, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. Like the idea that you want to get out of the family, or that you want to be respectable. You don't want your children to be in the same business. Very different. Like there's those patriarchal, usually matriarchal as well, roles. Also, that's a trope too. I would say a trope that's I'm taking a big bite here.
Yeah.
I'm get in trouble.
I have a feeling I know where you're headed.
But generally, like so many things, and these movies don't.
It's generally male dominant.
They don't pass the Bechdel test. Yeah,
Yeah.
they are always about the men first.
Well,
Which
it is, but what's interesting is it's male dominated at first blush, but I think there are definitely some really strong examples of how the females will either be the moral center or they will be a huge piece of what the male side of the story is missing. And I'm thinking Godfather.
it's true, but they still tie back to men. That's one of the problems.
100%.
Like, yes, you get a lot of autonomy in Kate's character in The Godfather, played by Diane Keaton.
Yep.
And her struggles through the second and third movie to liberate herself from a marriage that ends up being quite sour.
Well, and in the first movie, she's there to keep him anchored.
Yeah.
And despite her best efforts, it doesn't work.
Which ties to another point: infidelity. It's another key part of any good. If you don't have a guma, or that's what's called guma, and that's the Italian, I think, like kind of slang term they use in film. I don't know if they actually use it in real life, but for having a secondary relationship outside of your marriage, and they all always have that character.
Yeah.
And it's usually always somebody who's one of the either they're the main protagonist, who's usually a guy running the mob, gang, whatever. His wife or his girlfriend has hysteria about the fact that he's his infidelity.
He is, yeah. And I think we talked about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about architecture setting, but an obvious trope is guns and weapons of some sort.
Guns and weapons. You got to have violence.
Yeah. There has to be a rawness to it.
Yeah. Which is, and it's interesting because then it's like, where are the gangster movies, and I know they're out there, that avoid some of these tropes, but still do great character pieces on these. And I think the ones that elevate themselves.
That's a good audience question.
Yeah.
If you have examples of gangster movies that are able to kind of circumvent these tropes and still be really good, you should definitely let us know, whether in the comments or wherever.
Because some elevate themselves pretty far. I mean, everyone has to admit, 2-time Academy Award sequels back to back, 72 and 74.
Yeah.
Going off memory here, Godfather and The Godfather 2, also a combined running time of probably 7.5 hours or something like that. Yet, I mean, these are American classics. They are deemed American classics. They're movies that really made a dent, really changed the canon of gangster film, in a really great time period for filmmaking that was coming in the 70s. And I got Francis Ford Coppola, who has brought us so many great things. And influenced so many others by more than anything else, really captures all these things in those two movies.
If you were going to pick a modern day place to have your hideout, your lair, where would it be? And I'm going to go first.
Okay.
You ready?
Let's go.
Brandy Library in New York.
Brandy Library in New York. I think I've been there.
You have.
Have I been there?
If you haven't been to Brandy Library in New York, it's down near Hell's Kitchen, and it is spectacular. You have a basement area that not a lot of people get to go to. Which is
I've not been to the basement.
They have almost, if not every Scotch, and it's a fun place because you and I've been there together.
Yeah.
I have picture evidence of that.
Oh, yeah.
Including there with some of the crew, and Tomo, who's an amazing bartender.
Oh, yeah.
From Japan. But anyway, this is where like I would hang out if I was going to film a gangster movie. Bam, set number 1.
Oh my goodness.
Where are you going?
Where am I going to film my gangster movie? I think, ironically, from our last podcast, we had a great guest on.
Yes.
Rock Epstein.
Rock. Yes.
From the Texas Theater.
Yes.
And I actually would.
That's your hideout.
Use
Oh, that's so gangster.
I would use the Texas Theater.
I love that.
And what it would be is like, there's so many little spaces and nooks in there, but what we'd actually do is we would probably just like have meetings like 5 rows back, and one of us would sit in one row and someone on the other, and you'd face forward, and you're talking to each other, but you're not looking at each other because you're kind of like trading secrets and things like that.
I love
one of those kind of scenes. And ironically, there'd be like a gangster movie playing on the screen.
There's a certain irony to it. I want to do something we haven't done before.
Sounds great.
It's a little bit of an exercise.
All right.
Through the magic of editing, you won't have to actually sit here for the 3 or 4 minutes it takes us to do this.
Okay.
It may keep you to 60 seconds.
That sounds good.
This is going to be hard for you, I'm telling you now, because you have the architecture experience to way overthink this.
Oh, I will.
But I want you to think of...
I draw people in buildings every day. I do both. Like, I love to do that.
All right, I want you to think of the architectural style or the architectural role that is played in each of these movies and translate it to a character type. Okay, so kind of give me like who is that character?
Okay.
What's a line he would say, or what's he wear? What's he do?
Okay.
And I have red pens to match our background, and because red's a strong color in gangster films, and we're gonna let you watch the opening credits of Departed or something else.
First? What are we doing?
We're gonna do all three of them.
Okay.
We're gonna one per card. You ready? All right, here we go. Let's do Untouchables first. We'll go in chronological order.
Okay.
Untouchables first.
Okay.
All right. So I'll tell you what I had because yours is better.
I don't think mine is at all.
So if I was gonna take the architecture, I would make it. Yes, I can show it.
Okay.
Here.
How do we film this? You hold
We're
it
gonna do it. You want to do it up there? There it is.
Okay.
Maybe kind of.
I put mine next to yours. We just put them side by side.
Oh, look. See, but you drew yours.
You said to draw. You gave me a pen. What am I supposed to do?
You're an architect. What else are you going to do? All right, I'm going to read this because nobody will be able to read it. It's basically a regal judge. So it's something he doesn't bend. He doesn't negotiate. Justice is all that matters to him, right? Like he is law.
I love it.
And again, I have that scene of the in the station with the baby, it's law. Like justice is all that matters, good and bad.
To a fault.
Yeah, absolutely. To a fault, for sure.
Even the good get injured in this.
Well, and to be honest,
pursuit of justice.
Even like a little bit oblivious to the fact that justice is falling around him a little bit. But yes, decaying around him. But yes, that's my character.
Okay.
Your character, God, you freaking drew it too.
Well, mine is not quite the same here. I kind of went off that.
That's fine. Go for it.
So this one, I don't know if we need to see a picture of it or not, but in here, I just took Chicago. It's the streets. She is the streets of Chicago. It is the city singing. It is people walking and fruits being sold and all the buildings and all the nooks and crannies. And there's the good and there's the bad in every alley and every doorway. Just because it's an alley doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
Just because you're going into a market doesn't mean it's good.
Yeah.
Inside of there. So it's that.
All right. Untouchable or Departed.
Departed. Okay.
I went female cop. Just a little bit of a reaction to the male-dominated thing.
Yeah.
But she has secrets.
Yeah.
And she is run down. She is just here to survive the next lie.
Okay.
That's it.
They should send her to space. Then we would.
Yeah.
Let's still be fresh in 3 weeks. Okay.
There, we can.
I love it.
From there.
I love it. Okay. We're getting a camera on that.
Oh, there it is.
There we go. It's upside down.
No, it's upside down. Nobody will be able to read it anyway. But.
Okay. So I'll put mine down there.
Oh, and you have no idea if she's good or bad.
Okay, there's mine.
There's just no idea.
Mine's actually right side up. So
look at that.
There.
Yeah.
Okay, so mine is this ambiguous, good or bad man in a pinstripe suit with a hat and sunglasses.
Yes.
He's got these tropes that like every building in New York
has a fedora on
in this like time period might have. Well, he's got the outfit.
Yeah.
Is he a good guy? We don't know. Is he a bad guy? We don't know either.
We don't know.
But he is of that world.
I love it. All right, Alto Nights. I had to really work on this one.
That's so.
So I think he's an aging.
Twice as hard.
Yeah. I see what you did there. He's an aging Don who is past his prime. I really should write better if it's going to be on screen. He'll pour you a drink. He'll show you the view from his penthouse, and then he'll push you right off.
I like it. Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder how a $9 million profit-making movie, revenue-making movie, off a $45 million budget with
definitely
the best actor. This is my contribution. Is that I don't know. I honestly I'm left wanting more. I couldn't draw a Ken Burns style pan and scan photo from the 1920s, but if I could, that would be. I mean,
we didn't get into it.
Let's get into it then.
It's one of the things.
Not too late.
It's one of the things that just bugged me about that film, and I said it at the beginning. It's 2D in a 3D genre, and if you I think we asked what does it add to the canon? It just doesn't.
It doesn't at all. And I think that was a key part of this.
Cautionary tale.
We talked around this a lot, but just to kind of bring it back to the value that architecture can play in this genre. I mean, you talk about the tropes, you talk about different things, but when they relate to like the buildings and the settings,
Yeah.
the architecture is so critical in gangster films. When you do not have a well-established setting and surrounding and architecture, it falls flat. And that's a large part of what contributed to the Alto Nights, I don't think, being super successful.
Yeah.
There is no sweeping opening preamble like in The Godfather 2, telling the backstory of Vito Corleone coming to America and leaving Italy, escaping Italy, and his father being assassinated, his brother out in the middle of, they're in South Italy, and you don't get any of that. I mean, the trouble they had to go to film all that.
Yeah.
To arrive at Ellis Island and all the scenes and Vito Corleone at 9 years old in 1908 or whatever year it is, I think it's like right around that time, and he's singing to himself in a holding bedroom, a single bed space, looking out the window at the Statue of Liberty. I mean, come on, the Statue of Liberty. Talking about that is a piece of architecture.
Talking about symbolism.
Not unlike the Massachusetts State House, it elevates to something greater, and it's the idea that he's coming to America. And that is a big part of this too, is going back to, making something more for themselves, rising above just that. And I think those kind of settings, and then all the scenes in Italy, in Little Italy, as he's growing up in that second Godfather movie, are just quintessential. And instead, like in Alto Nights, we don't get that. We get these flat two-dimensional images in a narrative. But you look at like also The Untouchables. We get all these great scenes of Chicago. There are a bunch of scenes of Chicago and kind of setting that movie up in the very beginning and throughout the first third of the film that are just scenes, streets, things like that. And when you have that, the tapestry, the rich environment that creates, it is another character in the movie. And we've talked about that. Often it's one of the biggest characters.
All right. The 3 movies, you keep one, you have to lose one, never watch it again.
Okay.
And you can't watch one for 10 years.
Okay. Change.
Well, the not going to watch one's probably Alto Nights for both.
Okay, Alto Nights is out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I could never watch that movie again and be okay. But if I saw it again, maybe I'd feel differently. I don't think so. I don't think it contributed to the canon. That's
I agree.
At the end of the day, and as a film fan, a buff, and architecture fan, I want those things, and I don't get those in Alto Night.
Which one are you keeping, and which one are you getting rid of for 10 years?
That is tough. Okay, so I had some different thoughts about this, but I think actually, because The Untouchables was a movie that I saw so young, and I've seen it throughout my life, I think I might actually put The Untouchables. This is a really tough decision.
Yeah, I've got my answer.
It's a Saturday morning, and I turn on the television set, which I don't do anymore because all I have is streaming services that cost more than cable ever did. But if I did that and I had nothing to do, and I'm just going to watch whatever's on television, on broadcast,
and those two are on.
Those two are on.
I'm going Departed. I got to keep Departed.
I'm going Departed. I am. And Untouchables.
Amazing movie. But I'll let it go for 10 years.
Yeah, Untouchables is, it elevates it at a higher level, like an academic storytelling kind of way. Yeah. It's a fun movie. It also, it's a little dated. Yeah. It's trying to do this 30s era, I believe, 30s era film in the 80s. And it's a great movie. Yeah. But a lot of Brian De Palma's films are dated out of the gate. Yeah. They just are. Because he just really leans into the time period he's actually making these movies at. Scarface, which we didn't even talk about, is so clearly of a time period when it was filmed, but a great movie. Well, we'll just have to do part 2. Departed could have been filmed yesterday. Oh, that's a great point. If you think we should have done something different than those 3, or disagree with us in any way, please feel free to put it in the comments. We will respond back. Yeah, there could be a part 2. Yeah, there should be a part 2. There's always another Die Hard review. There's always a Die Hard review. American Gangster. You're right. Another great film that has elevators in it. Die Hard. Die Hard. Elevators. Well, you heard it here first. James, thanks for being here. This was a blast. Your drawing skills always better than mine. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you have any comments or you disagree with us even more so, make sure you put it in the comments below, and we will make sure to get back to you. And check out the next Architecture and Film episode.